Stupidity can be measured one way, that is, doing something and getting a bad result, then doing the exact same thing, getting a bad result again, then doing the exact same thing and expecting to get a different result and ultimately getting the same result. So you do the exact same thing again, only to get the same bad result, and all the while you can't figure out why the heck you continue to get that same bad result even though you do the same bad things. If there's a way that I could perfectly epitomize what the Cleveland Browns have represented over the past 15 years, it's that. Constant changes in the front office, constant changes in the head coaching position, constant changes in philosophies as an organization, all the while producing the same mediocre to bad, crappy results. In 2013 was another example of this. Another bad season, head coach fired, front office fired, 4-12 record, last place in the AFC North. So the Cleveland Browns, like I said, they did it again. Brought in a new general manager, brought in a new head coach, and all the while expect things to change. At some point in time, you'd have to think they would sit there and stay the course for a couple of years with one philosophy, one vision, one direction, one set of leadership, and have a go at it and see what they can do. And hopefully the Cleveland Browns have learned after so many years of doing the same things and getting the same bad results, yet expecting those results to change while doing the same bad, dumb things. Maybe they finally learned their lesson, and ultimately time is only going to tell. So it was another offseason of moves made by the Cleveland Browns. Gone was head coach Rob Chudzinski. Brought in was Buffalo defensive coordinator Mike Pettine, to be the new head man, at least for this season. Anything after that as a Cleveland Browns head coach, frankly, is gravy at this point in time. They were a little active in free agency, going after guys like Ben Tate, who you would think would be a big upgrade to a Cleveland running game that was very lacking all season long last year. They brought in Dante Whitner at safety. They brought in Carlos Dansby from Arizona to play on the inside at linebacker. They brought in Andrew Hawkins from the Cincinnati Bengals, and God knows they need all the help they can get at wide receiver. Then in the first round of the draft, they drafted Justin Gilbert, the corner out of Oklahoma State. And of course, the pick that everybody's talking about and has been talking about since the draft is Johnny Manziel from Texas A&M. Johnny Football. Maybe someday he will become Johnny Cleveland. In terms of the losses for the Browns in the offseason, you lose T.J. Ward, in free agency to the Denver Broncos. Bringing in Dante Whitner isn't even necessarily a lateral move. I might say it's just a bit of a downgrade. They lose DeQuell Jackson, but bringing in Carlos Dansby is probably a push, if not a slight upgrade. You fired head coach Rob Chudzinski. You got rid of Lombardi and Joe Banner. Then you get Josh Gordon and his situation and what's going to happen. And as of this recording, I don't know if he's going to be suspended. I'm assuming he is, whether he's going to be suspended for a few weeks, half the season, the full season. So there should be, more likely than not, a significant period of time in the 2014 season where the Cleveland Browns will be without, frankly, their best player and their most explosive offensive weapon. And that's going to be a very bad loss for this organization. Now, looking at the season to come, there are some signs of reason to be optimistic about the Cleveland Browns. They do have some strengths. I look at their offensive line. You've got Joe Thomas, second-round pick Joel Bitonio. You've got Alex Mack inside at center. You've got Mitchell Schwartz, your second-round pick a few years ago at right tackle. This is a Cleveland Browns organization that has invested a lot of draft pick currency on their offensive line, and at some point in time that will really pay off. I expect the Cleveland Browns to have one of the better offensive line units in professional football in 2014. That'll be an asset to protect your quarterback, whether that be Hoyer or Manziel, all year long in the passing game. It should open up better, more consistent holes and opportunities for Ben Tate and crew in the running game. I also really like their secondary. Yes, you do lose T.J. Ward and you replace him with Dante Whitner, and I said that's a bit of a downgrade, and I think it is. But you still got Joe Hayden, one of the better corners in the league. Buster Screen is a guy that I think, as Justin Gilbert develops and eventually takes his place as the number 2 guy, Buster Screen is going to be a very solid nickel corner for them. They've got some depth at corner, and I really like the Cleveland Browns secondary heading into 2014. In terms of question marks, It looks like the Browns are going to start off the season with Brian Hoyer as their starting quarterback. And I'm not here necessarily at this particular moment to pass judgment on whether or not that's the right decision or not. But the question mark is, if Brian Hoyer starts the season as the quarterback, how is he going to play early on? How long is he going to keep a foothold on the job? At some point in time, are they going to go with Johnny Manziel? How is he going to play if and when he gets that opportunity? What are the Browns going to get out of a quarterback position that, frankly, for years they've gotten absolutely nothing out of? Another big problem for those quarterbacks, whether it's Hoyer or Manziel, is what's going on at wide receiver. The Browns, frankly, have pretty much nothing at wide receiver. Yeah, you brought in Andrew Hawkins from the Cincinnati Bengals, but let's not kid ourselves here. He's a 5'7" slot guy. He can have some impact, but you needed a guy like Josh Gordon on the outside in order for a guy like Hawkins to have some impact in the slot. Now you're talking about not having Josh Gordon for several games, if not all of 2014, and the team did nothing in free agency to bring in a wide receiver. They did nothing via the draft to bring in a wide receiver, and it was just a really stunning development. Even with the Josh Gordon suspension not even being in consideration, it was stunning to me that the Cleveland Browns would not attempt to address this position at all, especially knowing that you were bringing in a young quarterback like Johnny Manziel. You know, this was a team last year that pretty much had Josh Gordon, Jordan Cameron, and that was about it in the passing game. Now you take out Josh Gordon, what do you pretty much got left? Cameron Jordan, or Jordan Cameron, excuse me. I always get him and the Saints defensive end flipped. My apologies. I also have questions about the running game. You know, I think Ben Tate will get a foothold on the starting job and be given an opportunity, but this is a Ben Tate that I have some concerns about whether he can actually be a bell cow back, whether he's actually going to be able to stay healthy, whether he's going to be the featured guy all year long. And then again, behind him, yes, you've got Terrence West, but it's be interesting to see how he progresses from playing at the FBS level to playing at the NFL level. This was a Cleveland Browns running game, again, that was absolutely atrocious in 2014. Looking at their, or 2013, excuse me, looking at their schedule in the season to come, they've got the AFC South, the NFC South, and then their AFC conference games are Oakland and Buffalo. So not a brutal stretch of schedule for the Cleveland Browns. They get, you know, some potential benefits having to play teams like Oakland and Buffalo. A couple of key stretches to watch for the Cleveland Browns. I think you look at really the first half of their season. The first 3 weeks right before their bye, they've got Pittsburgh on the road to start the season. Then they've got New Orleans and Baltimore at home. That looks like a bit of an imposing schedule. You got to go on the road to start the season. Then you've got New Orleans and Baltimore at home. If the Browns somehow, some way can frankly even win one of those first 3 games, if not maybe 2, then that will have surely give them some confidence and some good feelings and momentum heading into the next portion of their schedule. When you look at weeks 5 through 9, the Browns have the opportunity to make a little bit of hay here. They go to Tennessee, they host Pittsburgh, they go to Jacksonville, they host Oakland, they host Tampa Bay. So the first 3 weeks look a little bit ominous, but if the Browns can survive that and even, like I said, manage to find a way to win just 1 game and head into their bye week 1 and 2, weeks 5 through 9 coming out of that bye, at Tennessee, Pittsburgh, at Jacksonville, Oakland, Tampa Bay, there's an opportunity, a potential chance for the Cleveland Browns to get off to a somewhat decent start the first half of the season. The keys to success for the Browns, though, in 2014, the defense has to play like a top 10 unit. This is a defense with some talent on it at all 3 levels, the defensive line, the linebacking core, and the secondary. And at some point in time, this Cleveland Browns team needs to establish itself as a legit defensive force in the AFC North and in the AFC as a whole. And if this Browns team has any thoughts of contending in the AFC North or being a spoiler or at least being a competitive team on a more consistent basis, they need that defense to play at a top 10 level. They need Manziel to become the guy. I know Brian Hoyer looks like he's going to start the season as a starting quarterback. And like I said, I'm not necessarily here to pass judgment on that one way or another. At some point in time, I would assume that Johnny Manziel will get the opportunity. If and when he does, he needs to show why they spent a first-round pick on him. He needs to show why he's Johnny Football. He needs to show why he could become Johnny Cleveland. He needs to show that he can be the guy and be that guy that makes those big plays, that can take the team on his back and take them to victory when it seems all hope is lost. And more importantly, give that Cleveland Browns franchise hope. and an identity, something that they critically have lacked since they came back into being in 1999. They need some of the questions answered at running back, and in particular, I think more so wide receiver to be answered. If you're going to have Hoyer or Manziel have any hope at all of being productive as starting quarterbacks this year, I got to get something out of the wide receiving core, and I just have some serious concerns whether or not that's going to be the case. In terms of the Browns, though, it's one of these things. I can sit there and give you a big, bad prediction, but how much does it really matter if they don't stay the course with Farmer as GM and Petin as head coach? I hope that they've learned their lessons, that they're going to give this a couple of seasons. They're going to go in a direction and see where the hell they go. I do, though, however, feel that the Cleveland Browns will be somewhat improved in 2014. I think their defense is a bit of a sleeper unit. It's a defense that I think could play potentially at a top 10 level. You do have Ben Tate and potentially Terrence West at running back. I like some of the things that Brian Hoyer brings to the table as a quarterback, and I also like some of the things that Johnny Manziel brings to the table as a quarterback. You do still have Jordan Cameron there at tight end. You've got one of the potentially better offensive line units in the NFL. I think the Cleveland Browns have a real chance of maybe going 7-9, and that might only be good enough to finish fourth in the AFC North in 2014. But man, that's 3 more wins than the season before. Maybe, hopefully, if he went 7-9, it's because Johnny Manziel showed that he can bring something to the table. He could be that guy, and things would really start to be looking up for the Cleveland Browns franchise heading into 2015 and beyond. And that's ultimately what I think 2014 is about. You can't have these delusions of playoffs and greatness and all of this and all of that. But God knows it's the NFL. Anything can happen. And I mean, anything can happen. But if this season goes well, what it means is that Manziel's established himself as the future. They find a running game. Their defense plays like a top 10 unit, and they really set themselves up well to cause some damage in the future, like I said, in 2015 and beyond.